Thank you, everybody, for joining us this evening or this morning, depending on where you are. It is, of course, it's 3 a.m. in Moscow and Kyiv. It's 2 a.m. in Germany. It's 7 o'clock here in the Central Time Zone in Kansas. 5 o'clock in Surprise, Arizona. Bumper to bumper traffic, undoubtedly. And if you're in the South Pole, well, it's anytime you want it to be. And so thanks everybody for joining us this evening. I'm Steve Foulke, professor of history at Ottawa University, and I think it is my pleasure to have you here this evening. We are meeting under unusual circumstances, like I need to tell you. So joining me tonight from Wetter, Germany is Dave Zook. So Dave,
Hi.
Good morning.
Morning.
And the third person in the booth is our real-time fact checker, Corrine Ullum, who will be keeping us on the straight and narrow. So and she'll be weighing in periodically. Corrine, you want to say hello to the fine folks?
Hello. I don't think they can see me because I have you two spotlighted.
Well, fair enough. So with that, let's jump into it. But before we jump into it, I'd like to thank our sponsors. Our sponsors tonight locally, we'd like to thank U-Haul, now renting to all 51 states, U-Haul. And also then to Remax Canada. You need to make a move, real quick. Well, let Remax Canada help make a house a home. And so with that, let's get into it. 50 years ago, in Southeast Asia, Armed Forces Radio put on this song from Bing Crosby, the most played single in the history of all singles, White Christmas.
At Christmas.
Right, it's an odd choice, right? You know, for late April, but it was a signal that the people needed to get to the American embassy because it was time to leave. The North Vietnamese were on the doorstep of Saigon, and the American experience in Vietnam was coming to a rapid close. And so as thousands of people descended on the American embassy in Saigon, it was, I mean, candidly, it was a chaotic scene. It never really seen anything like it, as not only Americans were trying to get out, but almost anyone who had anything to do with the United States in the previous almost 2 decades of American involvement in South Vietnam were trying to get out.
As celebrating peace with honor. I think that's what that's all about.
A kind of peace with honor, but it was chaos. And I think 50 years ago, April 30th, 1975, many Americans really were wondering what had happened to the country, you know, what happened to the America that I once knew. And it's not 1975, and this is not the same kind of moment. But I do think that many Americans are openly wondering about the country and where the country is and what happened to the country that I once knew. And so
well, we're going
to please.
One more parallel. 50 years ago, America was bitterly divided because of this war in a way that we haven't seen for nearly half a century. But we're getting back to that kind of bitter divide.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It's you know, it was a sobering moment then, and I think we're in a kind of sobering moment today. And so as we think about the first 100 days of the second Trump administration, we note, right, that it is different. It is different than Trump 1.0. It is a more focused, more strident, more contentious, more combative administration, and you name it, the Trump administration is going in really almost unprecedented directions. So we're going to talk about a handful of things tonight. We can't cover everything, of course, by any stretch. Again, we will be happy to get to your questions. And so if something comes to mind, please put it in the chat. It is the case that we will steer clear, however, primarily of the higher ed piece of this and the Department of Education, which has gotten a lot of attention at Ottawa University and lots of places over the past few months. We are not going to come off the top rope and offer any kind of commentary regarding the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon. But if you are wondering what this A1 thing is, I'd encourage you to Google Linda McMahon and AI. It will make you smile, perhaps. But we're not going to do much with the Department of Ed tonight. We've got other things to address. And so let's get right to it. The rule of law, right? The rule of law. This is a country of laws. Always has been. And I think the question is, will it stay that way? So I have a couple of quotes for you, and then Dave would like you to weigh in here. Here's a quote from the President of the United States, from a recent interview with Time Magazine. Time Magazine question, right? Reporter asked Donald Trump, "We're a government ruled by laws, not men. Do you agree with that?" And the president answered, "Well, we're a government ruled by laws, not by men. Well, I think we're a government ruled by law, but somebody has to administer the law. And so therefore men, certainly men and women, certainly play a role in it. I wouldn't agree with it 100%. We are a government where men are involved in the process of law. And ideally, you're going to have honest men like me."
Well, thank God we do. We have we have him right where we want him, I guess.
There we go. And maybe more succinctly than Donald Trump in a Truth Social post from earlier this year, he who saves the country does not violate any law. And so I think what we're experiencing is a kind of flirtation with a kind of dictatorship that I think is sort of in play at the moment.
Yeah, can I just add
please,
one more quotation real quick? L'état c'est moi. I think that also pretty much encapsulates his attitude towards his position and the government.
I think that's fair. I think when we look at the most recent interview with the Atlantic, where Trump talks in terms of "I've run the country and the world," there is this sense that he has stumbled into something quite remarkable. And so as a country, I think we're left to sort of figure out where we're at the moment. And let's look at this maybe a little more nuanced from the perspective that some have had about the role of a president, right? And so the president has played an interesting kind of has an interesting kind of place in American history. But there are people who believe that in fact the president is first among equals, and maybe even more than that. This is the so-called unitary executive theory. The notion that the president is unchallenged within the executive branch. There are no checks and balances, and that the executive branch is in fact unchallenged amongst the other two branches. That there may be three branches of government, but there's only one executive branch, and there's only one executive within the executive branch. So Dave,
well, Steve,
your thoughts about
let me just ask you real quickly. You're a professor of history. Would you say that is what the founding fathers had in mind?
Well, some founding fathers, I think, at least flirted with this idea. It doesn't come out of thin air, but I think that the constitutional conventions overall would suggest that in fact this was not the prevailing feeling of those in Philadelphia. Coming after the experience of a monarchy, they were not looking to reestablish a king or a monarchy within the United States. So the unitary executive theory, it does have, it does have supporters, and candidly, it's long had supporters, but it has picked up momentum really in the 21st century. So while supporters of the UET would suggest that in fact this is, that the roots of this date back to the 18th century. I think in reality, this is very much a kind of 21st century notion that is embraced by many people within the federal government and some people on the Supreme Court. And so this gets us to Project 2025. And so Project 2025 is a product of the Heritage Society. The Heritage Society is a conservative think tank that was established in the 1970s by a guy. The seed money was put down by a guy by the name of Joseph Coors, son of Adolf, who was a brewing baron in Colorado, and was interested in elevating conservative ideas. The Heritage Society has become arguably one of the most important, if maybe the most important institution, think tank, if you will, in the United States. And Project 2025, Dave, you want to just talk briefly about this? I mean, so the Project 2025 in a nutshell is, or was what?
Well, I think this was something that they launched during the presidential campaign. They came out with it and just it was a fairly long plan for what should happen if Donald Trump would become president, and they put it out there. My feeling is that there's a lot here that became very explicit, that had been the unspoken part up until now. These are things that we might secretly plan or secretly hope for, but we don't explicitly say this is what we're going for. And they received a lot of pushback on that.
There was a lot of pushback, yeah. There was a lot of pushback. A lot of it,
much more so than
negative.
they anticipated, I think. And that led to Donald Trump disavowing, actually disavowing any knowledge of Plan 2025. So it's essentially, it's a blueprint for fascism in America.
It is on some level. I think that's right, Dave. And the primary author was this guy, Russell Vogt, who today serves as the head of the Office of Management and Budget, but I think arguably is the most important person in the federal government. So it is the case that Elon Musk gets a lot of attention. It's a lot of case that Stephen Miller gets a lot of attention, deservedly so. We'll talk about Miller here in a moment. But Vogt is he's extraordinarily significant, and he is the intellectual kind of leader of this project, and he has put in motion the idea of creating a much smaller, much less effective, if you will, federal government. And he's also very interested in pursuing the notion of transforming really the country into where Christianity is elevated above other faiths, to the point, right, where the Department of Justice is now, in terms of investigating discrimination, they are pursuing discrimination in the context of Christians being discriminated against. This is the direction that they've headed. So again, we'll talk about lots of people tonight over the next few minutes, but Russell Vogt is somebody that it's worth your attention. And if you haven't taken a look at Project 2025, there are lots of synopses out there, and it's definitely worth taking a look at it. And it is the case that this is a kind of handbook. Davis suggested a kind of handbook for fascism. I don't think that's an exaggeration, and it is a handbook that's being implemented.
A lot of the executive orders, an astounding number of executive orders, come basically directly from. I think that's exactly right. So thank you again for coming tonight. I know that amongst the people who are here are a number of my students who, again, the semester can't end quickly enough, right, from your perspective. And so you're here in part, of course, because of extra credit. So here is the extra credit task for those students who are in my geography and American history class. There'll be 6 Easter eggs. I'd like you to note them, to write them down. And then when this presentation is over, if you can send those to me by email by 8:30 Central Time, by 8:30 Central, that's the golden ticket. That's how you'll access your
extra credit. And so the first extra credit is Tim Hardin's amazing song, Reason to Believe. Also re-recorded by one Rod Stewart, right, Dave?
That's absolutely right.
There we
Are
go.
they going to need to sing this to get credit?
No, they won't need to sing it.
Okay.
They won't need to sing it. They won't need to sing it. Just simply write it down and send that to me, the 6 titles. Okay, let's move on and talk a little bit about DOGE, shall we? The Department for Governmental Efficiency. Elon Musk, right, is an unusual figure, to say the least. He is well, I don't know, Dave. How would you categorize Elon Musk?
Very rich egomaniac.
But perhaps so. There we go. And so he got involved in the campaign last summer. Provided well, it's hard to know what he provided. He certainly provided financial support.
Finances?
He added a certain kind of zest to the Trump campaign and to the Republican coffers as well. And Elon Musk was interested in participating in the government. And so I think people wondered when after the election happened, where would a second Trump administration, which direction would they go? Would they be more focused? What would they do? Because oftentimes the first Trump administration was just chaos. While there's certainly an amount of chaos in this second Trump administration, there is a certain kind of focus here, and part of the focus is being delivered by Musk and his his department for so-called Department for Governmental Efficiency. Musk, alongside a number of young computer types from his various businesses, have literally made their way into government agencies and gotten access to computers and altered, well, who knows what they've altered. They've also tended to fire probationary employees across the federal government. Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of individuals have been let go. There's a lot of doubt about the legality of all of this. Has Musk been appointed by Congress? Has there been any oversight? No. Has the Department of Governmental Efficiency had any kind of congressional approval? No.
Just to be clear, the creation of that department was one of the 25 executive orders that Trump signed on his first day in office. And clearly the consequences of DOGE is, it's one of the big stories of this presidency.
I think that's exactly right. I think it's exactly right. And I think what we'll see, well, okay, a number of things have happened here. So the image is of a federal worker taking down the Department of USAID, the arm of the State Department that, well, did work across the globe. That was solely, well, it was in DOGE's on DOGE's hit list from the very beginning, in part, right, because the USAID helped to dismantle apartheid in South Africa in the 20th century. But it is the case that Musk has suffered, well, Musk's businesses have suffered. The Tesla stock has dropped like a rock, and Musk announced fairly recently that he was somewhat stepping away, at least a few days a week. Who knows how this all plays out? So his focus is not completely on DOGE anymore, but DOGE has been effective in not only letting people go and dismantling huge areas of the federal government. For example, the Peace Corps, this as of yesterday, is being whittled down. But it's also created a certain sense of anxiety, even terror amongst federal employees, which is precisely the idea. And it's one of the things that's outlined in Project 2025 who really target federal employees. Federal employees are considered parasitic in Project 2025, and so there's no value in working for the government. It is the case that DOGE has set into motion real anxiety. And so within the federal government, there are, and this is, I know, very difficult, super tiny print. Polygraphs are being given. People are being outed. There's a kind of climate of fear and terror as people are, really trying to sort of hang on and wondering if they should hang on. And again, this is intentional. The idea here is to make working for the federal government, no matter what part of the federal government is, so untenable that you just don't want to be part of it, and that nobody would want to be part of it, and thereby shrinking the size of the federal government and the reach of the federal government.
Well, and while we're talking about Doge, the idea of civil servants, federal employees being civil servants, they are now, the part of the plan 2025 was to shift civil servants to political appointees, so that, to the victor go the spoils, right? You can essentially fill every government department that you want with loyalists. And this is certainly part of what Trump has done.
No, that's exactly right. And so the notion here is that civil servants, again, they, no matter who's the president, they're in place working in Department of the Interior or whatever. But if you change this and you have, a kind of loyalty test, there is this sense that only people who are, with the president will be in the federal government. It changes the nature of the federal government. It changes the nature of working for the federal government, and it is it's a profound change that is underway at the moment. It can't the national media is not really covering this very closely. It's not a particularly sexy story to talk about Vista or the General Services Administration, but it's underway.
Before we leave this,
please.
I know just a couple of quick things, because for one thing, the whole idea of government efficiency is really ironic here, because Musk came in and he wanted to cut $2 trillion from the budget with Doge. Became clear fairly quickly that that's not so easy to do, so he reduced that to $1 trillion. At this point, they're just happy to get a few billion in there, and most of the claims that they've made for the savings have been over-exaggerated. What happens, in fact, is that government waste in the form of U.S. aid shipments that are already ready to go are sitting and rotting, billions of dollars worth. And firing employees that we find out are actually pretty vital to the running of the government, so we have to rehire them, is also not particularly efficient way of running things. And so it's been one huge joke because of the way it's being run. I think we're all for a little bit more efficiency. We're all for ferreting out fraud in the government.
Absolutely, yeah.
But this is not the way to go. One last thing about Doge, and it's because it's a very important part. Doge raided the databases of a number of government departments, like the IRS, like the Department of Treasury, Social Security Administration, National Labor Relations Board. We don't have, as the only country in the 38-member Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, we don't have a data protection agency to enforce comprehensive privacy laws. And so there was no one there to get in the way. I mean, our Privacy Act is kind of a joke at the moment. No one there to stop that from happening. So they went in unauthorized. Well, the president said we could. The president doesn't have the authority to do it. It's illegal, unauthorized, and they raided databases. They have the sort of data that would make the SS or the Stasi or the KGB just blush with envy. They have the sort of database that's necessary to set up a surveillance state that's the envy of any surveillance state that's existed so far.
Which
That's a
raises,
big
which
deal.
it's a big deal. And it raises a number of really uncomfortable specters, which we will get at some more here in just a moment. So, second of the Easter eggs is from the great Sam Cooke. The great Sam Cooke, a change is going to come. Well, we certainly hope so. So, Sam Cooke's A Change is going to Come is Easter egg number 2. Well, there was a time when Dave and I were much younger, went to a movie, right? Movie, early 80s, Missing. Jack Lemmon, the great Jack Lemmon and Sissy Spacek, a story of a kind of fictional Latin American country where an American journalist he's disappeared.
A banana republic.
A banana republic. And he vanishes. And how could this happen? How could this happen to an American, right? And again, the story is, you try the investigation and trying to find him and to find out what the heck happened. And one of the things that you came away with was, as horrifying as the story was, it doesn't happen in the United States. At least it doesn't. This kind of thing doesn't happen on American streets. People just being ferreted away, scurried away by it's happening, right? It's happening. It's happening to citizens. It's happening to non-citizens. It's happening to students, international students in particular. And so it is. We've moved into a new era, And what's happening or not happening is that people are literally being disappeared without due process. And Dave, you want to talk about why the significance of due process? I mean, why due process? I mean, what's the big deal? Due process.
Well, it's essential to the concept of the rule of law that you are innocent until proven guilty. Anyone can say he robbed the bank, but unless they can actually present some evidence and show that that's actually what happened, you can't be prosecuted. And what's happening here is they're grabbing people off the street, sending them away before courts even have a chance to say something about it, much less decide whether or not the people that they are determining are criminals actually are, or determining that they don't have the legal status to be here. None of that's happening. And I think this is part of the whole Trump thing. Donald Trump wants to be the sole arbitrator of who is an American, who is a criminal, who's a terrorist, who's a friend, who's an enemy, and that's decided by his decree. This person is criminal because I say so, and that's enough.
Because I say so. So speech becomes deeply problematic. Muhammad Khalil, right? Arrested, detained, essentially disappeared. We think in Louisiana, right? His crime. Well, he's not been charged with the crime. He was active in the pro-Gaza movement. He was active in a university, right, in the pro-Gaza movement, and his crime, if you will, was speech. Well, that's not a crime. ICE, right, took him and well, okay, so he remains in detention. This is quite a famous case, one of many people, but Garcia and many other, right? So whether immigrants have documents or whether they don't have documents, people are being swept up by the Immigration Customs and Enforcement Agency, right, ICE, and oftentimes being removed from the United States, removed from North America. We've seen images, and Garcia is in El Salvador, right? And has become really at the center of this confrontation between the executive branch and the judicial branch. And so this is, Dave, we're really listing toward a kind of constitutional crisis if we're not there already, right? And so
I think we are. All nine of the SCOTUS justices have said they must bring this man back. And up until now, they've just been kind of pussyfooting around it. Well, we can't really, and we don't have the power, and it's well, just recently, the last couple of days, Trump has said in an interview, well, I could bring him back, but I'm not going to. That's it. The Supreme Court said I must. I say no,
Yeah,
no.
this is
So we're there, right?
we're there. Yeah, we're there. And so, to your point, Dave, that the Supreme Court recently ruled, and I know that the executive branch needs to bring Garcia back. The architect of these disappearances is this relatively young man, 40 years old, Stephen Miller, who has been involved in the Trump administration. Was involved in the first Trump administration. Was really amongst the first people to sign on with Donald Trump as a candidate in 2015, and he's very much kind of the eyes and ears of Trump in the White House, particularly in issues dealing with immigration.
Yeah, and I was going to say he's the architect of the most draconian immigration policies that are coming out of the Trump administration.
And so, in terms of this kind of brewing, or I think we're at it. I think you're right. Constitutional crisis regarding the courts. It's Miller who is, in fact, I think, encouraging the president to do nothing, or to do little, or to do, pretend like you don't know. All right. Third of the Easter eggs. Oh, Curtis Mayfield in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. He's so good. People Get Ready. I don't know if there's ever been a better song than People Get Ready. A great version, again, by Rod Stewart and Jeff Beck. So that's Easter egg number 3, Curtis Mayfield's People Get Ready. Well, this may be before even our time, Dave, but there was a time in the United States when people in the United States made things, and people bought things that were made in the United States, and that made in America was, in fact, the norm. And that the manufacturing belt, Milwaukee, right? Chicago, Gary, Indiana, Toledo, Pittsburgh, Erie, Pennsylvania, the backbone, right, of the American manufacturing belt, where cars and clothes and everything else was made. Well, that's a long time ago, right? Today, the manufacturing belt is known as the Rust Belt. And the Rust Belt extends along the Great Lakes, and the factories are long closed, right? And things aren't made in the United States anymore. Now, there are a number of reasons for this. Free trade is amongst the most important. But the Trump administration has, well, we've gone down the tariff road. And so, Dave, the tariff road. So what is the we're not economists, but we'll play like it for a moment. The economic logic of the tariff from the Trump administration would be what?
Oh, God only knows.
Oh,
No, I mean, seriously, you can't even ask Trump. On one day, it's the idea, well, we're going to get more fair and more equitable type of arrangement. The other idea is, well, with higher prices for things coming from out of country, domestic manufacturing will be encouraged and rebuilt. These are two things that are not, they're mutually exclusive.
they are. I mean, yeah.
What are you trying to do? But there are reasons possibly to establish tariffs against very unfair trade things. If China's producing a bunch of cheap junk and just dumping it in the American economy, yeah, raise some tariffs so that they don't just, they're not.
And yeah,
But this is indiscriminate, absolutely indiscriminate, and
it is indiscriminate. Yeah,
and
and
can't
so
work like that. It's going to harm trade relations with trade partners that we've been dealing with on a very good basis for decades.
well, that's right.
And people are just, everybody is confused. They have no idea why this is happening, what's going on. And it's not made better by the fact that one day we've got tariffs, the next day, maybe not. 30 days delay, we'll raise them or lower them. You just have the feeling it depends on what he had for breakfast that day.
Well, and to the point about Trump's influence, it is possible for Congress to step in and, in fact, rein in the tariffs. And in fact, 2 hours ago, the Senate met for a vote to try to eliminate the across the board 10% tariffs on most countries around the world, and came up short, as only 3 Republicans voted for the amendment.
But they were successful in getting rid of the tariffs against Canada.
That's exactly right. And Canada, boy, that's an interesting set of questions that we'll get to in a minute. The primary adversary in terms of the tariff has been sort of this is China. I mean, really, and you can see here on this chart, it sort of depends on, it's all over the place in terms of the tariffs, but these are materials coming from China. And the Trump administration is really trying to put the screws to China. And China, in order to try to create a kind of to get a trade deal with China, China's not budging at the moment. And this is
wait. He talked to Chairman Xi recently.
Well, not if you ask the chairman. And so it is the question, right, in the United States, that the tariffs up to this now have been just mostly rhetoric, but this summer is going to be a completely different thing, because many things come from China, right? And so whether it's toasters or toothbrushes, what we're going to see is we're going to see some empty shelves is what we're going to see. And this will be a really interesting moment. This will very much mirror, I think, the COVID supply chain disruption that we all experienced some 4 or 5 years ago.
One of the things that led to massive inflation.
Oh, it could be catastrophic. The early returns are that the ports of Los Angeles, for example, are largely empty. And interesting thing happened yesterday. Amazon floated the idea that in fact they were going to put in their the price. They're going to talk about how much the price rise, which everything's going to go up, how much it was due to the tariffs. This was immediately jumped on by the Trump administration. Carolyn Levitt, right, in the press conference, and Donald Trump himself apparently called Jeff Bezos, and Amazon immediately backed down. But I think you get some sense of the explosiveness of all of this. This is really political dynamite, and so I think that of all the things that could go haywire for the Trump administration and cause real pressure on Republicans, I think higher prices and the summer of scarcity could be deeply problematic. And I think that's where we're headed.
Well, we may have a Christmas of tears as well.
There we go. Well, somebody cue up White Christmas, bingo. The fourth of the Easter eggs, one of Dave's favorites, I have to tell you. Jefferson Airplane, those crazy kids from San Francisco, and volunteers. So volunteers, Jefferson Airplanes volunteers is the fourth Easter egg for the students who are still with us. Let's talk a little bit about Ukraine, shall we? Those of you who have been around know that this is a country of some interest for me. Come to a couple different times talking about the war in Ukraine. As you may be aware, the war continues unabated. There is, in fact, though, a new kind of perspective in Washington regarding the war. I think this was played out quite dramatically a couple of months ago when Prime Minister Zelensky was dressed down by both the president and the vice president. And one of the problems, apparently, was that President Zelensky was not wearing a suit, although that came from a reporter. But there is this sense in Washington that Ukraine's, well, whatever Ukraine is, they're kind of on their own. That Washington is no longer really that interested in defending Ukraine, no longer really all that interested in the war, maybe not all that interested in NATO anymore. And well, Dave, your thoughts. You're sitting, you're much closer to Ukraine than any of us are. So from a kind of European perspective, how is this playing out? This change of administration.
Yeah, you're talking about a political order that has lasted since the Second World War, that the United States was principally involved in putting together,
Right.
and has meant peace in Europe for about 80 years now. And this was threatened by the fact that all of a sudden Russia decided to attack a sovereign nation and to take it over. And all of the rest of the world was certainly the Western powers said we cannot let that stand. We cannot let Russia be successful in this aggressive takeover. We have to support Ukraine, and that was a unanimous opinion. That's just absolutely clear. For the sake of international peace and order, we have to support Ukraine, whatever it takes. And this is one of the many areas where Donald Trump has backed away from essentially the consensus of our allies.
I think that's exactly right, and backed away from 80 years of history. And so, who knows? Who knows where this is headed? The United States has been the key ally for Ukraine, has supplied much in the way of armaments and training and whatnot. It's interesting, Europeans, though, have picked up the slack in recent months. And if anything, Trump's indifference to Ukraine has emboldened European leaders and defense ministers and the like. And Europe is far, far, far more serious about its own security than it was even a couple of years ago. And so I'm not, again, our crystal ball is foggy on this one. It's very much uphill for Ukraine, but Dave?
Something about this meeting, which I think most people just found excruciating. But the idea, have you said thank you once? Is so absurd to anyone who has a concept of what is involved here. He is essentially the representative of a nation that's standing up for our international order.
That's right.
We should be thanking them. They're the ones that are leaving their lives.
We'll call it an awkward moment. We'll call it an awkward moment.
Yeah. An awkward moment.
An awkward moment. And so the fifth of the Easter eggs. Oh, the Easter eggs. They're kind of a cleanser, aren't they? So the Easter eggs, the great Phil Ochs. I have to say that if you're unfamiliar with Phil Ochs, man, he's worth a look. Phil Ochs is Power and Glory. Power and Glory is the fifth of the Easter eggs. Well, let's stay on the international scene for a second, shall we? And let's think about a Saturday evening a few weeks ago, when Saturday Night Live was coming to a close. Saturday Night Live being hosted by Shane Gillis, and Mike Myers made a couple of guest appearances on that show. And at the end, they had the closing and the thank you, and then the band plays and the closing credits. And Mike Myers, right, he looks straight into the camera and he mouths, elbows up, and wearing a Canada's Not for Sale shirt. What? Yeah, that's right. Elbows up. Be ready to fight. That's hockey lingo. That's hockey talk. And it's Mike Myers talking not really to Americans, but talking to Canadians about this 51st state nonsense. No, not for us, right? And so let's wander into this for a second, shall we? So let's wander into this for a second. So maybe Corinne can help us with the sound. Thank you. Let's wander into this. So Donald Trump has talked about Canada as a 51st state. He has talked at length about Greenland, maybe even invading Greenland, which is controlled by the Danes. And what about that Panama Canal zone? Well, it's been in the hands of the Panamanians since the 20th century, late 20th century. But from Donald Trump's perspective, it's really American territory. So, Dave, what are we to make of this?
This is, it's just so beyond the pale that if any other American president had suggested this, they would have been run out of office on a rail. Doing what he intends to do, or what he would like to do, would put America soundly in the category of rogue state. These are the nations that we have been fighting against in order to preserve an international order. And now we have an American president who says, why? That's a perfectly acceptable thing to do. To go and take sovereign nations and impose our will upon them. Let's not forget the Gaza Strip that he wants to make into a resort. Suggesting
it's not
that
funny.
that's
right.
going to happen. It's going to happen is something he said. As a bad joke, even as a bad joke, that sort of thing shouldn't be ignored. But the fact that the entire Congress of the United States has not stood up into one and said, you have to stop saying this shit and you have to apologize now. We are not a nation that does this, and we're not going to have you put us there.
So Donald Trump has done the impossible. He has united Canadians who are famously divided. My lord, Quebec almost voted themselves out of Canada, but 2 days ago, the Liberal candidate Mark Carney, who was left for dead, won convincingly. A Liberal Party.
That's the anti-Trump candidate. Yep.
The anti-Trump candidate, right? And I think this is important, right? This notion that Canadians feel really a sense of betrayal, right? That this is not a joke to them. This is incredibly hurtful, and this will never be forgotten, and maybe never be forgiven. And to the point that you're making about, well, where's Congress, right? Where are other voices telling the president to just zip it? The fact that people have been silent about this, Canadians recognize this, and they are not happy. And so Donald Trump is an unusual figure, but Canadians hold lots of people responsible for this. This is more than just the rantings of a guy who's, they're not. This has damaged Canadian-American relations, well, beyond repair. I don't know.
Maybe the closest international relationship we have, and have had for decades, if not centuries. This gets to a very central point of the whole Trump presidency up until now. He is ruining the brand America.
Yeah, I think this is where I'd like to
internationally.
Yeah.
He is taking a country that has enjoyed a good reputation, has enjoyed immense soft power across the world, because we do good things internationally, and we support the right causes, and we stand for the right principles. And he's turned it all on its head. And that sort of thing, it takes decades to build that sort of soft power. And as we're seeing now, it takes 100 days to destroy it.
100 days. So we're 100 days into the Trump administration, 100 days. Well, let's, Crean, can we hear some questions from the chat? It looks like we have a number of questions. So can we?
Yes, sure. We'll start at the top. What are your thoughts on people comparing our current government to the Weimar Republic?
Dave, this one's right near. This is in your wheelhouse, mister.
Well, I think
this is Weimar, Germany.
Yeah, there are certainly parallels, and one of the parallels is that if Trump has his way, we will see the rule of law reduced to a joke in America.
So to the uninitiated, Dave, the Weimar Republic, I mean, where does it sit in terms of the timeline of sort of 20th century Germany? So when we talk about the Weimar Republic, what did they or didn't they do in regard to Hitler's rise, for example?
The Weimar Republic basically was the form of government that Germany had after the First World War, and was a democracy. It was a representative democracy, and Adolf Hitler was made chancellor of Germany through democratic processes.
That's exactly right.
It soon became clear that what was important to him and to his party was that the political loyalty, was due to the person of Adolf Hitler and not to the country of Germany. And he would determine who the enemies were and who the friends were, and terror to the enemies. And if you were on his side, you would enjoy the benefits. But
there we go. Yeah, thank you. Karine, another question from the chat, please. You're muted at the moment.
I'm just looking for my mute button behind all these other buttons. Okay. Jessica says, if the judicial branch says bring him home, we're talking about Abogado Garcia.
Yep. That's right.
Bring him home, and the executive branch says no, then what? What's next? Do we have any recourse?
There is no recourse. This is the great fear. So the Supreme Court, the Department of the Supreme Court, the federal courts do not have an enforcement mechanism, and so this
would normally be the realm of the Department of Justice.
It would be,
but it's full of Trump loyalists.
It largely is at this point. Yeah. So it's this. I think, Jeff, this is the great fear, and Stephen Miller, I think, understands this. I'm not sure that Trump really does, but Stephen Miller understands this, and he's coming right to the line and maybe beyond the line. This is real constitutional fire. Could you imagine a scenario where if the executive branch sort of just disregards? I mean, you can imagine a scenario where the Congress gets involved, but this puts us into a really bad spot. This is one of the great holes in the Constitution.
In theory, what should happen at that moment is that the Congress says, all right, the president has flaunted a Supreme Court order, he must be impeached. So we will impeach him now. And that's how the checks and balances are supposed to work. In theory, and it's just not going to happen.
Seems like it's not in the cards at the moment. Another question, Karine, from the chat.
Do you feel that there are efforts being made to quash resistance, whether by the administration, the media, or social media? If so, what are the best organized sources to find out about town halls, protests, and other peaceful resistance events?
Well, I think you're the best person to answer that.
So I will, as I put in the chat, I think, yes, but we'll share some resources here shortly toward the end. And I'm debating whether I am going to be able to put a link in the chat or whether I'm going to just paste in some resources. But momentarily, we will be listing some newsletters you can, some online newsletters and blogs, some calendars of events of local places, activities, and a couple of other resourses.
Yeah,
so,
very good.
Yes.
Yeah. So yes. So we're mindful of this desire. Karine, a couple more questions from the chat.
If we do attempt to annex any of these territories with military force, what would the consequences even be?
Oh, so So let's play this game. So both Greenland and Canada are members of NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And one of the tenets of NATO is that if a member state is attacked, other member states come to its defense. Now, Dave, go ahead, Dave.
Well, the UN Secretary General, or was it the assistant, visited him in the Oval Office, and he started talking about this Greenland stuff, and suggesting that NATO could maybe help out with our takeover of Greenland. The man has no concept. He has no clue.
So, all right. So this, he does. So,
there's just one more thing about this.
Yes.
It will never happen. Nobody's going to allow that to happen. Not even our courageous Republican congressman.
It seems unlikely.
It's a bridge too far.
It does seem unlikely. Well, I'm comfortable saying it seems unlikely. I'm not comfortable with never, but it would be catastrophic. I mean, it would be catastrophic for the world order. It would be catastrophic for the United States. I think in the context of the Canal Zone, the Organization of American States could get involved. It would certainly set in motion a crisis at the United Nations. It would be, it'd just be really bad. But it could be, again, catastrophic. So either could be really bad or catastrophic.
Well, that's, the thing is, with Russia and China, things have become very unstable now because of Trump's influence internationally. A third world war is not unthinkable. And my question is, if there were a third world war, what side would we be on?
Oh, goodness. Well, this is taking an ugly turn, but I mean, this is where we're at, right? This is where the kinds of scenarios that, so Karine, I see a hand raised.
That's my hand. And I actually had a question. Could you talk a little bit about the recent Supreme Court decision that was a very surprising 9-0 against Trump?
Yeah, this is
what does that mean? I mean, I just didn't expect the right-leaning judges to side with the left, I guess.
If you read the decision, this is the Garcia decision to expedite his return from El Salvador. It is very vague. The decision itself is extremely vague and very few specifics. The support of Alito and Thomas was largely procedural. But the specifics, I mean, it was a surprise. And it does, I think, suggest, and Dave, I know Dave will have a thought about this, does suggest that in fact, it is really a bridge too far. That even for extraordinarily conservative justices who support the unitary executive theory, that you can't do this. You just can't do this. The specifics, though, very vague.
I also think that they have a sense of where Trump is going with all this, which is to say, the courts can't tell me anything. If necessary, I'll just impeach justices. I'll throw them out, whatever it takes. But they're not going to tell me what I have to do. And I think that deeply offends Supreme Court justices. So
even Samuel Alito.
Maybe even
so we'll get to some more questions in just a moment. But I have listen. Those who are my students, you have been magnificent, and you have been so patient for the 6th Easter egg. And so here, the wait is over. This machine kills fascists, my friends. It's Woody Guthrie's "This Land Is Your Land." This is the national anthem of the United States.
Oh, wait, stop bothering him.
So Woody Guthrie's "This Land Is Your Land." This is the 6th of the Easter eggs. So if you can send me the titles and the
not bothering us. So we're gonna go. Come on, kids, we're going. No.
Okay, Karine, can you get the sound?
I'm trying. All
right. So if you can send those to me, if you can send those to me by 8:30, please, by 8:30. The extra credit is yours. Credit is yours.
Just be gentle with him.
So Karine, you have another question in the chat, please, for us.
Yes, I do. I'm not doing a very good job of monitoring There we go. Mute finally. Okay. At what point might the U.S. military forcefully remove the president from office because Congress will not remove him? In other words, how bad do things have to get before the country or entirely within the country removes the sitting president?
Well, I think that's a really, really high bar in the best of circumstances. But again, this administration has done a pretty good job of getting loyalists where they need them, and the Pentagon has gone through all sorts of. They've let all sorts of really qualified career people. Well, they've essentially fired them and replaced them with loyalists.
Yeah, this is 25th Amendment stuff. The Joint Chiefs would get involved. There is a procedure involved in this because this process was envisioned, and it would have to. We're a ways from it. We really are a ways from it. But as Dave is suggesting, it would be difficult to achieve because you have to get a lot of buy-in from lots of different parties, and many of the parties who are involved in this decision making are very much in Trump loyalists at this point. Karine, you got another question or a couple more questions?
I don't see any in the chat, but I wanted to mention that David Brooks has now come forward and saying that the time has come for some extreme action. So to your point, I think that was Brianna it was Patricia who asked that question. Alaya asks, multiple European governments, Italy, Spain, and France are preparing people for the possibility of World War III. They are preparing brochures with instructions about surviving in times of war. They are concerned about Putin trying to take over other European countries, the Trump administration allying with Putin, and a hostile takeover from Trump administration of Greenland and potentially Canada. What is your opinion about this? Is this a real risk?
It's a real risk. No, it's a real risk. Is it remote? I think it's remote. Is it real? It's real. We wandered into a situation that is unprecedented, and we don't really know, right? We're 100 days into this administration. 100 days. Who the heck knows? So this is not, we're not trying to be fearmongers here, but I think it would be naive, and it would be we don't want to mislead people, but this is that we're in real trouble. The country's in real trouble. The world is in real trouble, and this is part of the reason we're here tonight, because we've not seen this before. We are in uncharted territory. Anything's possible.
Ethan has asked, what does this presidency mean for future to come? Not quite sure.
Well, I mean, one wonders, right? One wonders if there'll be future presidents. I mean, this is one of the disturbing scenarios is the thing that has been floated at several points along the way regarding the institution of martial law and the idea of canceling elections. Trump has joked about this. It would be difficult to achieve given the disparate nature of American elections. Again, states hold elections, the federal government doesn't hold elections. But in terms of sort of a future political United States, I think that there is real concern that there would be an attempt to try to kind of short circuit future elections. Let me
give the cup half full.
Version. Please. It's time for that.
I think the last 50 days of this 100 have been making me more optimistic. I'm seeing the opposition
I'm with you.
Get on its feet and start to find ways to effectively counter what's going on. And I think that's just going to get stronger and stronger as time goes on. I think Trump will fail at doing what he would like to do, which is just to be president until he dies. And I think it's going to have the effect of maybe resetting American political values and just the idea, we dodged a bullet here. What do we need to do to get things really back on track in a solid way. And I hope that that's what's going to happen. And I think
and the polling suggests as much, right? It's we're all aware of this, that the polling has, I mean, Trump has cratered in polls in recent weeks. It's also the case, although Dave thinks that Trump will live forever, that Trump is an old man and cholesterol is undefeated. And it would be, I think, very different if Trump was J.D. Vance, a relatively young man, but Trump is not that. And I tend to think, Dave maybe sees this differently, I tend to think that Trump is, to some degree, a singular figure, that he is, in fact, a product of a kind of, approach, but there is a kind of singularity to Trump. The visceral appeal to Trump doesn't extend to other American leaders, even other leaders within the MAGA. So people love Trump. They love J.D. Vance a little less. I just think and so if Trump is not a viable, vital figure, then some of this loses steam very quickly. So let's, I'll tell you what, we really appreciate your time tonight. We appreciate you sticking with us. I don't know. I'm happy to answer more questions if you have them. Green, do you see any more questions in the chat?
There are indeed a couple. Sam Potter follows up on Elias' question and says, if Trump had any desire for war in Europe, would he not increase rather than decrease the military, especially in Europe?
I don't know that that's a very good point. He's very uninterested in international affairs. He's very interested in Americans leaving North America, American soldiers. Yeah, I mean, you could imagine a more assertive and aggressive position from the Trump administration regarding kind of building up American troops. He doesn't want any part of that, and I think the Trump administration doesn't want any part of that. So yeah, I don't necessarily. I think that we alluded to this this war scenario. I don't think Trump has a real appetite for war.
No.
I think that's pretty clear. Long history of bone spurs, after all.
Steve Bays asks, how does this impact trust of Christianity?
Well, that's the difficulty about that is how are we defining Christianity? Are we talking about evangelicals that are for the most part also nationalists? Is this how we're identifying Christians? If it is, I don't think they come away from this looking good. So
it is remarkable that the Trump administration decided to take on the Pope. So Pope Francis, almost his dying moment, was in stark opposition to the Trump administration's immigration policy, for example, and almost to the Pope's dying moment, J.D. Vance was hectoring the Pope. It's quite a spectacle. Christian nationalists are strongly behind Donald Trump. Christian nationalists believe in Project 2025.
Yeah.
But that's not Christianity writ large. It just isn't. But I mean,
it's a huge political movement in the States. I mean, there's no questioning that. It's a very influential group.
Yeah, and there's no question that that evangelical Christians have long supported Donald Trump, and will continue to. It seems very unlikely that they will back away from him no matter what he does.
Saw a comment earlier about his comments about wanting to perhaps be the Pope. If they choose him, he's available apparently. And I think he thinks he would do a great job.
We have a question about martial law.
Yes.
Martial law rumors have been flying recently in social media spaces.
Well, they certainly have.
Can martial law realistically be accomplished with our current level of troops in a country as geographically large as the United States?
Well, I mean, it's a leading question, and no, it can't. I mean, martial law is a very vaporous concept to begin with. It's been put in motion most recently in the 1960s, but only in very limited ways in very limited parts of the country. But to exact martial law in a country of 345 million people, no. But
although there,
please, yeah.
Already in his first administration, Trump was playing with martial measures in response to protests and so on, using the army against protesters in Washington, D.C., for example, which is straight out of martial law playbook.
Yes.
So
and
selectively and locally, perhaps.
And part of the appeal of Pete Hegseth, the current the head of the Defense Department, who is singularly unqualified to run a Dairy Queen, but it's really a problematic figure. But part of the reason he was selected was it's the belief that he would be open to the idea of shooting protesters, of having the military, take over the streets and take on protesters. And so is that martial law? No, not exactly. But are there, like Dave says, martial measures? Absolutely. So yeah, this is where this is what we're looking at, conceivably. Green, other questions?
Yes. Is there a possibility that these intimidating political moves are just smoke and mirrors so that we're distracted from the real agenda of the Trump administration?
Real agenda. Is that the real agenda? We think that's the real agenda.
Yeah.
This is the real agenda.
I think it's about setting up a fascist dictator with Trump running everything as the king.
Dave and I don't see eye to eye on all this, but this is, I think we agree here completely that this is the real agenda. Are people being enriched? Yes. Are people making out like bandits? Yes. But this is it. What you see is what you get. This is what they're trying to do. Open to another question or two. We appreciate people's hanging in there. We know this is of great interest. We know these are scary times. And we certainly don't have all the answers, but happy to take on another question or two if you have them. Create anything else in the chat?
Nothing in the chat, but I have a question. So I've seen calls on social media and various podcasts and things about people saying, well, why in the world haven't we impeached him by now? He's certainly committed many, many offenses that are impeachable. Do you think there's a time for that? Is it too soon for that? Is it coming? Republicans obviously control both houses.
That's the problem.
What do you got?
That's the problem right there. There's no way to impeach him right now. Maybe after 2026, this is my hope. Maybe we'll have the power to do it then. If the Democrats get to, I don't even think they have to control both houses. I think there's a point at which some Republicans are going to start jumping the sinking ship. I think that's going to happen, and maybe in numbers large enough that an impeachment would be a realistic possibility.
Again, a reminder that that the impeachment, and again, Donald Trump's been impeached twice. Impeachment's a two-part process. The House puts together articles of impeachment. Essentially, these are charges. If that makes it through the House, then a trial is held in the Senate. Two trials were held during Trump's first administration. And he was found not guilty in both of them. It's a long shot. I think it's a long shot, but some people hold out hope. Yeah. So let's leave it there. Yeah, it's a long shot.
We have another question. Do you think big tech oligarchy would really want or allow Trump to become a dictator? If in fact that's really what he intends, how would that serve Bezos and Zuckerberg, etc.?
Well, that's a very good question because they've elevated him. The immigration piece of it is interesting, given the visas and how big tech really relies on brain power from other parts of the world, and
the
that
tariff
very much
part is interesting. I don't think it benefits them at all, but I think they have the hope that if they stay on his bride side and kiss enough ass, that he will let them do what they want to do.
Well,
I think that's an unrealistic expectation, but
and the one sort of scenario that does get some traction is J.D. Vance, the vice president, is in fact a product of Silicon Valley, is a product of Peter Thiel, and the only reason that J.D. Vance is a national figure is because Peter Thiel wants him to be. There's always conversation about J.D. Vance somehow becoming elevated to the presidency and essentially being, Silicon Valley's lackey. Because J.D. Vance's rise is, it's difficult to explain. He comes from, his background is quite modest, as we're all aware, the hillbilly elegy thing. He spent some time in Silicon Valley as a venture capitalist, and suddenly he's a senator, and suddenly he's a vice president, and suddenly he's a very visible vice president. It is, we don't see rises like this in American politics very often. So it's one of those things that makes you wonder.
Brianne asks to Sam's point was about this. Is the current failure of Tesla, I assume that means the company, a metaphorical warning shot to the big tech oligarchy? Do our dollars say more than a protest sign?
I guess we're going to find out this summer. But yes, I think the dollars do. I mean, yes, it does matter. I mean, I think that the Tesla, it has been, it's very interesting.
Wildly successful beyond all dreams, I think. It's incredible.
It is odd that, so the Tesla piece of it is odd as we think about this, that Tesla, again, manufacturing e-vehicles, is in the middle of a kind of administration that in fact has done everything possible to destroy electric vehicles and to destroy green energy. And that has become sort of the poster child for MAGA. So that's an odd fit, but it is the case that Tesla's tanking. And this is where we have to thank people around the globe, particularly our great friends in Europe, who have made it their life's mission, it seems, to take Tesla out. And so, consumer patterns matter. Ask the good folks at Target about this.
And I would just piggyback and say that these are not mutually exclusive things to, vote with your dollars and
That's
to
right.
hold the protest sign. I think they're both effective. One, being out and being visible with your dissent encourages other people, and they realize that they are not alone. Even if you don't think that in the moment that sign has any effect, I do think there's a little bit of a ripple effect that is important to note.
Absolutely.
I think that's well said. And Creed, what do we know about resources for folks who are interested?
I have put in some calendar events links, some newsletters and blogs, and also some films about resistance from the Ukraine, from Serbia, from the farm workers, Cesar Chavez. So they're all there in the chat, and I'm thinking we can save the chat out if people aren't able to grab all that stuff out. I'm not exactly sure how we can send this because we didn't have registrations, but
fair enough. And so those of you who are interested in these materials, feel free just to contact me or to Kring directly, just to reach out to us, and we'll get them to you. I think this is a good place to end it. These are very difficult times, but si se puede, folks. We can do this. We can make it through. This land is your land. This land is our land. So
absolutely right.
And Woodie Guthrie will go out with a song. Maybe.
Thank you, everybody,
Thanks a lot.
and good night. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.